She worked on the 4th floor of Okafor Medical Center for 3 years, and in all that time, no one who passed her in that corridor ever asked her name. They called her the lab clerk, or sometimes just the girl with the files. The new department head called her that one twice in the same meeting, and the second time, she had already learned not to correct him. Ada Nwosu needed the job. So she answered to whatever they gave her. But the night she refused to sign off on a DNA result she knew was wrong. A result that would have handed a dying man's inheritance to the wrong family, wiping out 27 years of someone else's rightful claim. That was the night the building stopped being able to ignore her. They said she was overstepping. One senior technician laughed so hard, he had to grip the edge of the reception desk to steady himself. A manager told her to go back to her filing cabinet and leave real science to real scientists. Another simply said, "You do not know your level, my dear." She left the room. She did not leave the building, and 3 weeks later, in the 7th floor boardroom, with 43 people sitting in silence and a DNA report that no one in that room had prepared themselves for, the people who had laughed the loudest could not look at her. Because the woman they had spent 3 years reducing to a job title and a corridor, the one they called that one, she was not who any of them had assumed, and neither, it turned out, was she. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Drop your city in the comments below. We want to know where this story is finding you tonight. Get comfortable. Get your popcorn. Because what happened to Ada Nwosu will make you think twice before you look past someone ever again. 3 years is long enough to learn a building. Long enough to know which elevator doors close before you reach them. Which supervisor's footsteps sound different when there is trouble. Which smile from the front desk means nothing is fine. Ada Nwosu had learned all of it. She had learned the building the way quiet people learn things. Not by being told, but by watching. She arrived every morning at 7:43, not because her shift started at 8, but because being early had never once cost her anything. She clocked in, changed into her uniform in a storage room, because the female staff bathroom was technically under renovation for the past 6 months, and no one had filed a complaint. And then she climbed to the 4th floor. Not by elevator. The 4th floor elevator required a key card that the lab department had not been allocated since the building restructuring 18 months ago. The stairs were fine. Ada's legs were fine. She managed the lab records for Okafor Medical Center. That was what her contract said. In practice, she filed samples, tracked test results, corrected entry errors before they reached the senior technicians, and answered the phone in a voice that every caller said sounded extremely professional, which was how she knew the callers had never seen her desk, which was in the corridor outside the actual lab, because the lab itself had run out of internal desk space 2 years before Ada was hired. She did not complain. She had tried complaining once, in her first month. The department head had looked at her the way you look at a car alarm going off at midnight. Not alarmed, just irritated, waiting for it to stop. So Ada stopped. Her mother had been sick for 4 years by the time she got the job. Not the sudden kind of sickness that arrives on a Tuesday and gives you 3 weeks to say goodbye. This was the slow kind. The kind that empties savings accounts one at a time. The kind where you wake up in the morning and the first thought in your head, before you have even opened your eyes, is a number. 4,700,000 naira. That was the number on her mother's hospital invoice after the first surgery. It was the number Ada had been carrying for 8 months before she understood that she would be carrying it, long after her mother stopped being able to see her carry it. Her mother died on a Thursday in November. The week after the funeral, Ada went back to work. She needed the job. She still needed it. Okafor Medical Center was not just a hospital. It was the flagship property of Okafor Medical Group, which was one of 4 subsidiaries of Okafor Holdings. a company that owned, among other things, 2 pharmaceutical distribution networks, a chain of diagnostic centers across 4 states, and a controlling stake in a mid-size insurance firm. The man who ran all of it was 34 years old. His name appeared on every employee badge, on the lobby signage, on the letterhead of every warning letter that had ever been slipped under Ada's department door. Dare Okafor. Ada had seen him in person twice before the night. Everything changed. The first time he walked through the 4th floor during a compliance inspection and did not look at her. The second time, he walked through the 4th floor during another compliance inspection and did not look at her. She had begun to understand that, to Dare Okafor, she existed the way the corridor existed, as a surface to pass through, not a person to encounter. That was fine. Ada was not there to be seen by Dare Okafor. She was there to manage the lab records. She was there to pay back 4,700,000 naira. The night it all began was a Wednesday. Ada was working the late shift because Clement, the junior technician supposed to cover Wednesday evenings, had called in sick for the 4th Wednesday in a row, and everyone had quietly agreed to stop mentioning it. It was 11:18 at night. The corridor was quiet. The only light still on in her section was her desk lamp, and the only sound was the soft print click of the thermal printer producing the day's final batch of results. She almost missed it. The results were for a battery of tests on patient file 0047NW. A man named Emmanuel Eze, 71 years old, admitted 3 days earlier from Abuja for a secondary evaluation. She had processed dozens of his files over the past week. She knew his case the way you know a familiar route, not because you studied it, but because you have traveled it enough times that your hands know the turns. So when the DNA comparison report came off the printer and she read it, something in her hands stopped. She read it again. Then a third time, the genetic markers for paternity had been inverted. Someone, at the data entry stage, almost certainly, had transposed 2 columns in the comparison table. The result, as printed, showed Emmanuel Eze as having no biological connection to the person being tested as his heir. The actual data, read correctly, showed the opposite. Ada sat very still. 11:23 p.m. The printer had stopped. The corridor was quiet. She thought about Clement calling in sick for the 4th Wednesday. She thought about the 4,700,000 naira. She thought about the department head and the look he had given her the one time she tried to raise an issue. Then she thought about Emmanuel Eze, 71 years old, lying in the ward 3 floors above her, and the family that would receive this result tomorrow morning and use it to determine who inherited everything the man had spent his life building. She picked up the phone and called Dr. Samuel Adebayo. Dr. Samuel was the senior physician overseeing the inheritance evaluation case. He was 52, soft-spoken in the way of a man who had decided long ago that clarity did not require volume. He answered on the 3rd ring. Dr. Samuel, sir. Good evening. This is Ada from the Lab Records Department on the 4th floor. I am sorry to disturb you at this hour, but there is a column transposition in the DNA comparison report for patient 047NW. The error reverses the paternity finding. If this result goes out tomorrow morning, it will say the opposite of what the data actually shows. Silence on the line. You are certain? He said. I have checked it 3 times, sir. I can send you the raw data file and the printed report side by side. The discrepancy is visible immediately. How long have you been looking at this? Since 11:21, sir. A pause. Then, send me the files. Do not let that report leave the department tonight. I will speak to the department head first thing in the morning. Ada sent the files. She set the report aside with a note clipped to the front in red ink. Hold. Pending review A. End was you. Then she sat down, turned off her desk lamp, and sat in the dark for a moment. Not because she was being dramatic, just because she was tired and it was 11:29 at night, and her legs ached from the stairs. She went home at midnight, She came back at 7:43 the next morning. By 9 a.m., the department head had been informed. By 9:45, there was a meeting in the conference room, one Ada was not invited to. She could hear voices from her desk in the corridor. She heard distinctly a laugh. Then another. At 10:15, the department head came to stand at her desk. He crossed his arms. This was his posture for conversations he had already decided the outcome of. You sent internal lab data to Dr. Adebayo last night without authorization. I flagged an error in a patient result, sir. The data was relevant to the case. I sent it to the physician in charge. You are a lab records clerk. Yes, sir. Records clerks do not make clinical judgments. I did not make a clinical judgment, sir. I identified a data entry error. The column structure for paternity comparison is standardized across all WHO certified reporting formats. The transposition was clear. I know what you are going to say. He leaned slightly forward. In this department, errors are handled internally, by the people who are qualified to handle them, not by. He looked at her desk, at the filing trays, at the thermal printer, at the red ink note still clipped to the held report. Not by whoever is managing the filing cabinet. Are we clear? If that report had gone out as printed, Ada said, Mr. Emmanuel Aza's biological heir would have received a negative paternity finding. An estate would have passed to the wrong person. That is not a filing error, sir. That is someone's entire life. The department head stared at her for 3 full seconds. It was the longest he had ever looked directly at her. His face held the particular expression of a man encountering a level of stillness he did not know how to negotiate. Know your level, he said quietly, and he walked back to the conference room. The laugh she had heard earlier, she understood now it had been about her. Ada turned back to her desk. She straightened the pen she kept beside the printer. She did not cry, because the corridor was not a private place, and the renovation on the bathroom had not moved in 6 months. What Ada did not know, sitting at that desk in the corridor on the 4th floor, was that Dare Okafor was in the building that morning. Not for an inspection. He had come because his grandfather had called him at 6 a.m. and told him to come. And Dare Okafor, whatever else he was, did not ignore his grandfather's calls. He took the stairs from the lobby because the 7th floor elevator was under maintenance, and the signage directing people to the alternate route was small, and placed in a corner that assumed you already knew where you were going. The stairs from the lobby came out on the 4th floor. He came through the stairwell door and walked past a woman moving in the opposite direction, her head down, carrying a stack of files thick enough to cover her chin. She stepped sideways without looking up. Sorry, sir. He had already moved past her when he heard the department head's voice from down the meeting room, the door half open. He heard the word filing. He heard the laugh. Then he heard very clearly 2 words. Know your level. He did not go in. He continued toward the other stairwell, but on the landing, he stopped. He stood still for a moment. Then he took out his phone and sent a message to his personal assistant. Pull the full incident report for the 4th floor lab records department. This morning. Every detail. He went to see his grandfather. Chief Joseph Okafor was 78 years old and had not been well since August. Not dramatically unwell. Not the kind that sent people rushing to bedsides, but the slow, consolidating kind of a man whose body was quietly renegotiating its. His doctor had used the phrase manageable with care. Chief Okafor had translated this as, I have time, but not as much as I would like. He had been using the time thinking about Dare. Dare was his grandson, his son's only child, the person who had absorbed the Okafor Holdings Board by the age of 31 and run it without visible effort for 3 years since. He was also, as far as Chief Okafor could determine, deeply alone. Not lonely in the way people talk about. Alone in the other way, the way where you come home and the building is quiet, and that is simply correct. No one waiting, no conversation expected, The quiet as a natural state, not an absence. Chief Okafor did not think this was correct. When Dare arrived at the examination room that morning, the old man was still in his agbada, which his doctor had been trying to get him to change out of for 20 minutes. He looked up when Dare came in and smiled the specific smile he kept for his grandson. Not the public smile, not the patriarchal smile, the real one. The one that still made Dare feel, at 34, like he was 7 years old and had arrived somewhere safe. "You came," the old man said. "Of course I came." Dare spoke with the doctor. The summary was the same. Blood pressure elevated, pattern worsening slowly, medication managing but not solving, stress reduction essential. The old man waved this away as if it were someone else's problem. Then, when the doctor stepped out, Chief Okafor looked at Dare directly. "You said that the last time," he said. Dare, who had not said anything yet, understood immediately. "I am fine, Grandpa." "You said that the last time also, because it was true. Dare." The old man's voice did not rise. It never rose. It simply changed register, became the voice that had settled disputes in boardrooms 40 years ago. The voice that 8-year-old Dare had understood meant this conversation is not optional. "I am not asking about your health. I am asking whether you are happy. Those are not the same question." Dare looked at the wall. Outside the window, the city was going about its Wednesday. Indifferent, continuous. "I am managing," he said. He heard it as he said it, heard how it sounded. The old man heard it too. He said nothing more. He just looked at his hands on his knees and thought something privately that he did not share. The incident report reached Dare's phone at 2 p.m. He read it in his car in the basement garage. He read it twice. He read the name at the bottom, A. Nwosu. He put the phone down on the seat beside him and thought about the stairwell. The woman with the files who had stepped aside without looking up. The laugh from the conference room. The 2 words that had followed him up the stairs. He sent a second message to his PA. "Schedule a full staff department meeting for lab records, 4th floor. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. I will chair it." His PA responded in 40 seconds. "Noted, sir." Ada was told about the meeting at 4 p.m. She wrote it on a post-it note and stuck it to the edge of her monitor. She told her friend Bissy about it in the cafeteria that evening, over tea that had gone cold. Bissy worked at the hospital pharmacy. She was the only person on the 4th floor who had reliably, in 3 years, called Ada by her name. "The CEO?" Bissy put down her fork. "Dare Okafor is attending a 4th floor department meeting. That is what I was told." "Ada, that man does not attend department meetings. He has people for that. He has people for his people. Something is different. Something happened yesterday with a DNA report, I heard. Chinye from the pharmacy station said you escalated a patient result without authorization. I reported a data error that would have sent an inheritance to the wrong person." She framed it differently. Chinye frames everything differently. Ada drank the cold tea anyway. "Whatever the meeting is for, I will go, I will sit down, I will say what I did and why I did it. Then I will come back to my desk." Bissy watched her for a long moment. "You are the calmest person I have ever seen carry trouble." "Bissy." Ada set down the cup. "I am not calm, I am tired. There is a difference." The meeting was at 8 a.m. Dare arrived at 7:58. He sat at the head of the table without announcement. He went through the department's compliance records, response times, error rates, staffing gaps, the key card allocation that had lapsed 18 months ago, the bathroom renovation that had not moved in 6. He asked specific questions with specific numbers. When answers were vague, he wrote something down and moved on. The department head sat very still. Then he looked up and said, "The incident at 11:23 p.m. 2 nights ago. The DNA result that was flagged before it went out." "Who made that call?" Ada raised her hand. Dare looked at her. She was in the second-to-last seat. The peripheral seat she took as habit, the kind of habit you develop when you have spent a long time being a person who does not take up the center. Name, he said. Arden Wasu Sir, lab records. Walk me through what you found. She did, carefully, without drama. She explained the column transposition, the effect it would have had on the legal interpretation of the result, why she had called Dr. Adebayo, rather than leave a note for morning. She explained what DNA comparative analysis requires in terms of column structure, and why a transposition of that specific type was an error the software would not automatically catch. She knew this because she had read the technical documentation. Dare listened without writing. Just listened. When she finished, he said, "How do you know the column structure protocol? That is not typically within the scope of a records role." "I read the technical documentation when I started, sir. The result formats were new to me, and I did not want to make entry mistakes that others would have to correct. The column structure is detailed in Volume 3 of the WHO Laboratory Safety Guidelines." A pause. "You read the WHO technical guidelines?" "Voluntarily." "Yes, sir. Volume 3 and parts of Volume 4. The department head made a sound. Dare looked at him briefly. The department head stopped making sounds. Dare looked back at Ada. If the error had gone through, what would the legal outcome have been for the Easy estate? The result would have shown a negative paternity finding, where the correct finding is positive. Entered into the legal record at that stage of evaluation, reversing it would have required a formal retesting process, a legal filing, to contest the initial certification, and a waiting period. Depending on the estate attorney's timeline, that could take months. The wrong person would have inherited Mr. Ease's estate in the interim. "And you understood all of this at 11:23 p.m. "Yes, sir. And you flagged it anyway." She met his eyes. "What would have been the reason not to, sir?" The room did not move. Someone's phone vibrated against the table and the person holding it turned it face down immediately, as if embarrassed by the sound. Dare closed his notepad. "There will be a 90-day audit of all patient DNA results. New accuracy protocols by end of month. The elevator key card for this floor will be allocated this week. The bathroom renovation will have a completion date filed with facilities by Friday." He stood. "The department head's position will be reviewed separately." He left. The meeting ended. The department head stared at the wall for a long time. BC found Ada in the corridor afterward and grabbed her arm. She held it for a moment without speaking. Then she said, "Ada, that man was looking at you like what?" BC shook her head slowly. "I am not sure, but not the way he looks at other things." 2 days later, Ada's key card was upgraded. She noticed it when the 4th floor elevator opened for the first time in 23 months of passing it. She stood in front of it for a moment. The way you stand in front of something that has stopped being what you expected it to be. Then she stepped in. She told no one. But BC saw her face when she walked off the elevator and figured it out anyway. What neither of them knew was that same afternoon, Dare Okafor had made 3 phone calls. The first 2 were to his legal team regarding the department head's review. The third was to Dr. Samuel Adebayo. "The Ise inheritance evaluation," Dare said. "How is it progressing?" "We are retesting to confirm the corrected result," Dr. Samuel said. "Full certification within 10 days. I am also running a secondary cross-reference. Chief Emmanuel brought additional samples when he arrived from Abuja. Old samples from a family incident many years ago. I want to make sure we have a complete picture before I certify anything." "What kind of family incident?" A pause. "Chief Emmanuel Ez lost a child 31 years ago. A daughter. There was a car accident outside Enugu. The child survived the initial crash, but was separated in the confusion, sent to a local clinic, while the family was brought to the central hospital. By the time anyone thought to check, the girl was not in any of the records. They searched for 8 years. It was never resolved." Dare was quiet for a moment. "You are running a cross-reference to find the daughter," he said. "Chief Emmanuel brought the samples specifically for this. He is 71 and his health is uncertain." I believe he wants to know before there is no more time to know. A pause. I am running the cross-reference against the hospital's employee health database. Standard inclusion in the scope. I am not expecting a result, but it is thorough practice. Be thorough, Dare said. Whatever you need. He hung up. He sat in his office for a moment, looking at the city through the glass wall. Then he picked up his phone again and called his grandfather. Grandpa. Yes, my boy. You said you were concerned about me. I said it, yes. If, hypothetically, I were to consider someone, not permanently, not for any decided reason, but someone I did not yet understand who was. He stopped. He tried again. Someone who read the WHO technical guidelines voluntarily. His grandfather was quiet for so long that Dare checked the line. Then Chief Joseph Okafor said, very gently, My boy, what is this person's name? Ada received the meeting request the following Thursday, from the executive assistant to the CEO through the internal system. Friday, 5 p.m., 7th floor, confidential. Contractual matter, she told BC. BC said, Go, she went. Everything in the executive suite was the particular shade of clean that requires someone paid to maintain it, specifically. The furniture was dark wood that belonged in homes where you could hear your own footsteps. Ada walked through it with her spine straight and her hands still. Dare was standing by the window when she arrived. He turned when she entered and gestured to the chair across the desk. Ada sat. He sat. He placed a folder on the desk between them and did not open it. I will be direct, he said. My grandfather is unwell. His condition is managed, but one of the primary sources of his stress is his concern that I will not marry before he dies. I am not presently interested in marriage. I am interested in my grandfather's health. These two facts have created a problem, and I am looking for a practical solution. He opened the folder. Inside was a contract. 3 pages, single-spaced. 6 months, he said. You appear as my partner at the occasions my grandfather expects attendance at. You live in the house. There is a private suite on the east wing with its own entrance and no shared living spaces unless we are in a situation that requires performance. At the end of 6 months, we part ways with a mutually agreed narrative. He met her eyes. In exchange, I will clear the 4,700,000 naira outstanding balance on your mother's hospital account. And I will formalize your secondment as a lab quality analyst, a permanent internal position within the group. Ada looked at the contract. She did not touch it. How do you know the exact balance? She said. I had the account reviewed. You reviewed my mother's medical debt. It appeared in your department's employee file, flagged for hardship deferment. He waited. Is there a problem? Ada was quiet. Outside the window, the Lagos evening was settling into that particular color, the kind that looked like a promise that could go either way. I have a condition, she said. He had not expected a condition. He had expected yes or no. The secondment contract, Ada said. I want it signed and in my possession before I sign anything else. Not conditional on my performance, not reviewable at the 6-month mark. Signed and issued on day 1. She looked at him steadily. If I am performing a service, the terms must be ones I can trust independently. I have learned that kindness which arrives without paperwork tends to leave the same way. A long silence. Dare picked up his pen. He turned to the back page of the contract and wrote 3 lines in the margin. He signed it. He passed it across. Both items are on that page, he said. Read the full document before you sign. She read it, all 3 pages, in the room. While he waited, it took 11 minutes, she signed. I have one more thing to say, Ada said, standing. Say it. I will not be unkind to your grandfather. If he is a good man, I will treat him as one. The arrangement can be professional between us. But I do not know how to perform basic human decency on a schedule. That part will be real. Something shifted in Dare's face. Not visibly, not dramatically. The way a room's pressure shifts when a window is opened somewhere distant. Fine, he said. She left. Chief Joseph Okafor met Ada for the first time on a Saturday evening in the main sitting room. He was smaller than Dare, but carried the same quality of stillness. He sat forward in his chair and looked at her with the eyes of a man who had spent a lifetime reading people and had gotten very good at it. "You are the one who caught the mistake," he said. "The DNA report." "Yes, sir. Dare told me." He looked at Dare, who was standing near the window in a way that suggested this had been mentioned in passing and was not intended to be the opening of the conversation. That kind of thing takes courage. Not loudness, courage. You know the difference. "I think so, sir. Loudness is for people who need to be heard. Courage is for doing what needs to be done, whether or not anyone is listening." He looked back at Ada. "Some people in this family could learn that." "Grandpa," Dare said. "I am giving a compliment. Let me finish." He looked at Ada. "You will not be comfortable here immediately. These things take time. But you will be treated well. I will personally make sure." Ada looked at this man, in his late 70s, unwell, sitting forward in his chair with the seriousness of someone who meant every word. She thought of her mother, who had been the same kind of serious, who had raised her entirely alone, and had never, not once, made Ada feel that the absence of money was the absence of love. "Thank you, sir," Ada said, and she meant it. Ronk arrived in the 3rd week. Ada was in the East Garden when the car came. The small garden near the bougainvillea that had taken over the northeast wall, which had become the one space in the building where she felt entirely herself. She came inside through the side entrance and found a woman standing in the main hallway with the quality of stillness that belongs to people who have rehearsed their entrances. Dressed in a way that required planning. Smiling in a way that meant something other than welcome. "You must be Ada," the woman said. "Dare has mentioned you." A pause timed with precision. Once. Ronki had known Dare for 5 years. She had been, at various points, his closest companion, and the reason he had stopped taking personal calls for 6 months in late 2021. She had come back now because something had shifted in the architecture of his attention, and she had felt the change before it reached language. She had not anticipated Ada. She had expected someone easy to dismiss. The lab clerk, the convenient arrangement. She had come prepared to establish prior claim and resolve the situation quietly. What she found instead was a woman who answered her pleasantries without warmth and without hostility, who sat across from her at the dining table and looked back at her the way you look at rain you are deciding whether to walk through. "So you work at the hospital," Ronki said pleasantly, the first morning. "Lab quality analyst," Ada said. "I was recently promoted." A very small pause. Of course, Dare is generous to those who work for him. Ada looked at her. She held the look exactly long enough. Then she said, mildly, "I earned the promotion, but thank you." In the weeks that followed, Ronki established herself as a fixture. She had history with the family, familiarity with the staff, comfort in the rooms that Ada could not compete with and did not try to. She moved through the house as if it already belonged to her, without drama, in a way that was far more effective than drama. The campaign against Ada started subtly, a misplaced file, an appointment not passed on, a comment to the housekeeper, just within earshot, about staff knowing their place. Then it stopped being subtle. In the 4th week, a batch of patient records was accessed through Ada's work credentials at 3 a.m., accessed and moved. Ada noticed it Tuesday evening. She checked the access log herself. She called Bissy. "Someone used my credentials," Ada said quietly. "I can see the timestamp and the IP trace. It was 3 in the morning, Bissy. I was asleep. Ada, I need you at the hospital IT security office before 7 tomorrow. Pull the full credential access report. Cite the protocol for unauthorized access. It is in Section 7, Subsection 4 of the hospital's IT security manual. Have the report printed and officially stamped before anyone else comes in." A pause. "How do you know the IT security manual?" "Because I read it when they gave me the work-from-home setup." "Be early, BC. I will be there at 6:45, BC said. The report was in Ada's hands by 7:52 the next morning. It showed the credential, the timestamp, and the IP address from which the access had been made. The IP address was registered to a device on the household network. Ada did not go to Dare with the report. Not yet. She filed it. She kept working. She kept coming to breakfast. She kept being civil to Ronki, with the steadiness of someone who cannot be reached by what is being attempted. What Ronki could not have known, what no one in that house knew, was that there was a document sitting in Dr. Samuel Adebayo's office that was about to make every other document in this story secondary. Dr. Samuel had been careful. That was his nature, careful, thorough, methodical, in the way that the best physicians are methodical, which is to say he verified twice, not from uncertainty, but from understanding that certainty requires it. He had run the corrected result for the Ise inheritance case first. It confirmed everything Ada had identified on that Wednesday night. Emmanuel Ise's son was the legitimate heir. The estate was protected. The certification was ready. Then he turned to the secondary cross-reference. The old samples Chief Emmanuel had brought from Abuja, properly stored, extracted from a 31-year-old forensic record connected to a car accident outside Enugu. A child, approximately 3 years old at the time of the accident. A red heart-shaped birthmark on the left forearm, noted in the initial clinic record. Lost in the confusion when 2 vehicles from the same crash were routed to different medical facilities. Searched for through 8 years of official inquiry, and eventually filed as unresolved. Dr. Samuel ran the cross-reference against the hospital employee health database, a standard inclusion in the scope. He was not expecting a result. He ran it the way you check a box on a form, dutifully, without anticipation. He found a match. He sat with it for a long time. Then he ran it again with a different methodology. Then he sent the raw data to an independent laboratory for blind verification, without specifying the context. He waited 6 days. The result came back identical. A match probability of 9,994%. Dr. Samuel sat in his office with both reports on the desk in front of him. Outside his window, the city continued. He looked at the name on the employee health record, Ada Nwosu. He picked up the phone and called Dare Okafor. Mr. Dare, I need a meeting, in person. It concerns the A's case, and it concerns your household. I need Miss Ada Nwosu to be present. The meeting was set for a Thursday afternoon on the 7th floor. Ada came from the hospital side of the building. She had not been told the subject. She came in her work clothes, professional, carrying nothing except the small bag she brought everywhere. Neither had Chief Okafor been told the subject. He had been invited because Dr. Samuel had said it was important, and the old man had said he would come. The Ez family's legal representative, Barrister Lawal, arrived at exactly 2 p.m. with a briefcase, and the expression of a man who had been told just enough to know this was significant. Dare was already there when Ada walked in. He looked at her when she entered. She looked back. They sat down. Dr. Samuel opened 2 folders on the desk without preamble. He looked at the room and said, I am going to explain what I have found. I am asking everyone to let me finish before they respond. What I am presenting has been independently verified. I am confident in the results. He began with an explanation, not condescending, not rushed, of what DNA cross-referencing involves. He explained it in the way a good physician explains things, translating without talking down. A cross-reference compares a genetic profile from one sample against reference samples to identify shared biological markers. It can establish familial relationships, biological identity, lineage. The error rate of the methodology used in this case was less than 1 in 4 billion. The room was paying attention in the particular way of rooms that understand something irreversible is about to be said. The cross-reference of the E family samples against the hospital employee database, Dr. Samuel said, identified one match. The match corresponds to the employee health record for Ada Nwosu. He looked at Ada. The genetic profile in the 31-year-old E's forensic record, the profile from the missing daughter of Chief Emmanuel E's, matches your own profile at a probability of 9,994%. He paused. You are not to the standard of medical and legal certainty, Ada Nwosu. Another pause. You are Adaze Eze, Chief Emmanuel Eze's daughter. The child who disappeared in the accident in 1993. Ada heard the words. She heard them one at a time, and then together as a sentence, and then she understood what the sentence meant. She did not speak. She looked at her left forearm. At the mark, just above the wrist, lighter now than it had been when she was young, faded by years of sun and time, but still there. The shape she had lived with her whole life without thinking to question. The shape she had never been told was anything other than ordinary. Barrister Lawal stood up. Then he sat back down, as if he had stood before knowing what he intended to do. Chief Okafor said very quietly, Adaze. He said it the way you say a name you have been holding in your mouth for years without speaking aloud. Ada looked at him. He was looking back at her with those same eyes from the first evening in the sitting room, the eyes that had seen something and not named it. His hands, folded on his knees, were trembling slightly. This old man, this careful, quiet, watchful old man. Dare had not moved. He was looking at Ada with an expression she had not seen on him before. Not the CEO face, not the professional face, not the careful neutral he kept for rooms where he needed to show nothing. He looked like a man watching the foundation of something he had been certain about shift without warning. Ada looked at her arm again, at the mark above her wrist. The mother who raised me, she said. Her voice was steady. Deliberately steady, the way you hold a glass carefully when your hands want to shake. Her name was Rosaline Nwosu. She was a nurse. She found me near the clinic after the accident. She was the one who took me in when no one came. She looked at the folders. She raised me for 28 years. She died last November. Barrister Lawal said carefully, Miss, I need a moment, Ada said. She stood and walked to the window. Not dramatically. She just needed to stand. She looked at the city below. Same city. Same buildings. Same afternoon light, doing what it always did at this hour. She thought about Mama Rosaline, about the bottom drawer of the wardrobe in their one-room flat, the one Ada had opened after the funeral, while sorting through the things that had to be sorted. Inside, wrapped carefully in old cloth, she had found a handkerchief, stiff with age, embroidered in the corner with 2 letters, E.E. She had assumed it was her mother's name, Rosaline. She had not thought about it again. She put her hand flat against the glass. She breathed. Then she turned back. I want to meet my father, she said. Not immediately. I need time to understand what this means. But I want to meet him. She looked at Dr. Samuel. I would like my own copy of the results, all of them, including the independent verification report. I have prepared copies, Dr. Samuel said. Thank you. She looked at Chief Okafor. You knew something. When we first met, the old man was quiet. I saw something, he said. Not clearly enough to be certain, only clearly enough to wonder. She nodded slowly. She sat back down. She picked up her copy of the reports, folded them, placed them in her bag. Her hands were steady. She made sure of it. What happened next moved the way consequences tend to move. Not all at once, but in accelerating sequence, each one arriving before the last had settled. Ronki learned about the meeting from the household staff. She assembled enough of the details to understand that whatever advantage she had been positioning toward had shifted in ways she had not accounted for. She made a decision that was, by any reasonable measure, the wrong one. She filed a complaint with the hospital IT security office against Ada. Unauthorized access to patient records. She had timestamps. She had screenshots. Edited ones, but screenshots. The complaint reached Dare's desk the following morning. He read it. Then he called his own IT security head. He asked for the original access log, not the version attached to the complaint. The one with IP addresses. He read the IP addresses. He set the report on the desk and looked at it for a moment. Then he went to find Ronke. He found her in the east garden, tea in front of her, the posture of complete, relaxed innocence. The IP address on the credential access log, Dare said without greeting, matches the household network. From a device registered to your personal account. Ronke looked at him. Her expression moved in very small increments. You moved Ada's files using her credentials at 3 a.m., he said. And then you filed a complaint this morning, suggesting she had done it herself. Dare, I do not need an explanation. I need you to leave, she stood. You are choosing her. After everything, I am not choosing her over you. His voice did not rise. It never rose. I am applying a standard that has nothing to do with choice. You falsified evidence against an employee. Against a woman who did nothing to you except exist in a space you wanted. He looked at her with the specific quality of stillness that in him meant something final. Pack what is yours. I will have the rest inventoried. Ronke left the garden. She left the house. She was gone before Ada returned from work that afternoon. Ada found out from Bissisi, who had heard from the IT security office. She said nothing about it to Dare when she came home. She changed out of her work clothes. She came to the evening table. She had brought Chief Okafor a bowl of pepper soup from the caterer on Adiola Street. The one he had mentioned once, 4 weeks earlier, in the middle of a conversation about something else. She set it in front of him. He looked at the bowl, then at her. You remembered, he said. You mentioned it once, she said. But you mentioned it. He ate the soup. Dare watched them from across the table with the expression of a man recalibrating something he had not known needed adjustment. Ada met Emmanuel Eze 2 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon. Dare drove her to the meeting. She had not asked him to. He had not announced he would. He had simply been standing at the car when she came downstairs, keys in hand, and she had looked at him for a moment and then gotten in. Chief Emmanuel Eze was 71, in a wheelchair, attended by a nurse who stood at the appropriate distance, with the professional discretion of someone doing their job well. He was a large man made smaller by illness. You could still see the largeness in the structure of him, in the hands, in the jaw, in the way he held his head. But illness had done what illness always does to large men. He looked at Ada for a long time when she came in. She stood in the doorway for a moment, her bag over one shoulder, and looked back. Then she crossed the room and sat beside him. I don't remember you, she said. I want to be honest about that first. I don't remember the accident. I don't remember anything from before the woman who found me. I am going to need time to understand what this means. He looked at her. His eyes were very still. Take all the time you need, he said. I have been waiting 31 years. I can wait as long as you need me to. She looked at his hands. Hands that had built things. Hands that had searched for 8 years through hospitals and police stations and dead ends for a child who had been 3 years old and wearing a white handkerchief with 2 embroidered letters. The mother who raised me, Ada said. Rosaline. She kept the handkerchief. In a drawer. I found it after she died. I thought the letters were part of her name. She paused. She saved me from the accident, and she kept the only clue about where I came from, and she never told me. I have been trying to understand that. He was quiet. I think, Ada said slowly, she kept it because she wanted me to find it when I was ready, and she did not tell me because she was afraid I would leave. She looked at his hands again. She loved me. That is not something I question. She gave up everything she had to raise me properly. She died with a debt she had been carrying alone. Ada's voice did not break. She had made sure of that before she walked in. She was my mother. I need you to know that before anything else. Emmanuel Eason nodded once. Slowly. She raised my daughter, he said, when I could not find her. I owe that woman everything. His voice was rough and careful at the same time. I will honor her. In whatever way you tell me is right. That is a promise. Ada sat with him for 2 hours. They did not cover much. They began. That was enough for now. On the drive back, Dare said nothing for a long time. The city moved past the windows. Ada sat with her hands in her lap and looked at. "You are thinking about her," Dare said. It was not a question. "Yes, the woman who raised you." "I keep coming back to the drawer," Ada said. "She kept that handkerchief for 28 years. She could have thrown it away and I would never have known. But she kept it." She looked at the passing streetlights. "She was preparing me, even when I did not know I needed to be prepared." Dare drove. He did not fill the silence with something easier. "Dare," Ada said. "Yes. You said you called Dr. Samuel about the cross-reference before the meeting." "I did. Based on what?" He was quiet for a moment. "Based on the fact that everything about you was consistent in a way that suggested a story that had not yet been told. The way you spoke in that department meeting. The things you knew. The way you carry yourself without asking anyone to notice it." He paused. "I could not have told you specifically what I was looking for. I only knew that the pieces did not add up to a lab records clerk in a corridor." "They added up to a missing heiress," Ada said dryly. "They added up to someone worth paying attention to." He glanced at her. "The Heiress part was Dr. Samuel's finding. My part was earlier." She looked at him for a long moment. Outside the window, the last of the evening was disappearing into night. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Tell me." "When I signed that contract, I told myself it was practical. I told myself I was solving a problem. And for the first week, that is what it was." She looked at the road. "Somewhere in the weeks after that, I stopped being able to be purely practical about it. About this house. About your grandfather." A pause. "About you." She said it plainly, the way Ada said most things. Without arrangement, without distance. "I do not know what to do with that. I have never been in a situation where the arrangement and the feeling were running in opposite directions." Dare was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "The contract has 31 days left." "I know. I would like to discuss what happens after it." "I would like that too," she said. "But not tonight. Tonight I am still processing everything else. That is fair." She turned and looked at him fully. "You are different than I thought you were. When did you think differently?" "The first time you walked through the 4th floor and did not look at me." He was quiet. "I did not look at you because I was avoiding looking at you," he said. "There is a difference." Ada did not respond, but she turned to look out the window again, and something in her face had changed. Or perhaps something had simply settled, the way things settle when they find the place they were always going to end up. The formal board meeting where the E's inheritance matter was concluded took place on a Friday morning, 3 weeks later. 43 people in the room. Dr. Samuel presented the DNA findings with the same clarity he had brought to the smaller meeting. He explained the science again. Cross-referencing, verification methodology, error rate. Because a room of 43 deserves the same respect as a room of 5. The independent verification was presented. Both reports were entered into the legal record. The room was quiet for a long time after he finished. Ada sat next to Dare. She was wearing a deep gold dress that Chief Okafor had pressed into her hands that morning, insisting she could not go to a formal proceeding in professional work clothes. She had looked at the dress for a moment before putting it on. She had thought of what Mama Rosaline always said: "Things given from love do not need to be earned. They need to be received." She put it on. When the chairman concluded the proceedings and the room stood, Dare stood beside her. He did not take her hand. But he turned slightly, in a way that placed him between her and the larger movement of the room, and he stayed there. Chief Okafor, who had attended with his doctor's reluctant permission, reached across from his chair and laid his hand briefly on her forearm, the left forearm, where the birthmark was. He did not say anything, he just nodded once. The way you nod at something true. Barrister Lawal sought Ada out before the room dispersed. He shook her hand and said something formal about the estate process and timelines. She thanked him and heard very little of it, because what she was actually doing was watching Chief Emmanuel ease across the room, being helped toward the door by his nurse, and watching the way the old man moved, slowly, carefully, with the deliberateness of someone who had waited a very long time and was not in a hurry now that the waiting was done. He turned at the door as if he had felt her looking. He nodded once. She nodded back. That was enough, for now. Ronke's matter was resolved through official channels without drama. The evidence was clean. Her attorney negotiated a settlement before it reached criminal proceedings. The settlement included a formal written apology, witnessed and signed, delivered to Ada's legal representative within 30 days. Ada read it once. She filed it. She did not think much about Ronke after that. Not from coldness. From the same practical clarity that had kept her at her desk in the corridor for 3 years. Energy spent monitoring what has been done to you is energy not spent on anything else. And Ada had a great deal of everything else to attend to. She had 2 families to understand, carefully, at her own pace. She had a lab-quality analyst position she intended to build into something the hospital had not been doing properly and should have. She had Chief Okafor to feed pepper soup to, and Emmanuel Eze to learn slowly, and BC to call every Thursday, and a man sitting next to her in a boardroom who had stood between her and a room full of people, and stayed there without being asked. On the evening before the 6th month ended, Dare found her in the East Garden. He came with 2 glasses of water, which was not dramatic and was, somehow, exactly right. He sat beside her. She took the glass he offered. They sat in silence for a while. The kind of silence that had, over these months, begun to feel less like the absence of conversation and more like its own language between 2 people who had learned each other's rhythms. "You are going to say something about the contract," Ada said. "I was going to, yes. Tomorrow is the last day." "Yes." She turned to face him. The evening light was doing the thing it does in that garden, softening the colors, making the bougainvillea deeper and warmer than the afternoon had left it. "Dare, you know I am staying, and you know it is not because of the contract." She held his eyes. "And I know that you know that." He was quiet, the kind of quiet that meant he was receiving something he had been waiting to hear. "Say it plainly," he said. "You know I need things," said plainly. "I know you do." She looked at the bougainvillea wall. "I am staying because this garden is mine now, and that kitchen is mine, and your grandfather is mine." Her voice shifted briefly, then steadied. "And you are a work in progress, but you are mine also." Dare said, "Ada, yes. The first thing you said in that department meeting that made me look at you differently, it was not the WHO guidelines. What was it? It was when I asked you why you flagged the result, and you said, 'What would have been the reason not to?'" He paused. "I had not been asked a question like that in a very long time, one that assumed integrity as the default, not the exception." She looked at him. "I am going to ask you something," he said, "and I want you to answer it as directly as you answer everything else. Ask, do you want to stay? Not as an arrangement. Not because of the house or the position or any of the things the contract gave you. Do you want to stay the way people stay when they have chosen something and mean it?" Ada looked at him for a long moment. The garden was quiet around them. The city behind the wall was doing what the city always did, moving, indifferent, continuous. But here in this garden, in this particular evening, things felt settled in a way she had not expected to encounter so soon. "Yes," she said. "I want to stay." He reached out and took her hand. Just a hand, taken. Not arranged, not performed. She let him hold it. 1 month later, Ada sat beside Rosaline Nwosu's grave in the small cemetery where she had been buried the previous November. She had brought a new handkerchief, clean, carefully pressed, her initials embroidered in the corner, A-E-N, Adieze Eze Nwosu, both names, both lives. She spoke to her mother the way you speak to people who can no longer answer but have not stopped listening. "I found them, Mama," she said. "The other family. They are good people. My father, he is not well, But he is the kind of strong that comes from waiting a long time. He says, I have his mother's eyes. He doesn't know he is also right about your eyes. I told him about you. I told him everything. The cemetery was quiet around her. The kind of quiet that belongs to places where things are finished and things are still unfinished at the same time. I have someone, she said. He is precise and difficult and reads compliance reports in the car for relaxation. You would have had opinions about him. You always had opinions. She smiled at the headstone. He is good, Mama. The kind of good that does not announce itself. You taught me how to see that kind. She placed the handkerchief on the grave. Not as a symbol. Just because it belonged here, near this woman who had kept the first one for 28 years without explanation. I am not alone anymore, she said. I know that is what you always wanted. Not the money or the name or the other family, just that I would not be alone. She put her hand flat on the ground. I am not alone. She stayed until she was ready to leave. Then she stood, straightened her dress, and walked back to the car where Dare was waiting. Engine off, window down, with the patience of a man who had been practicing it and was getting better. She got in, he drove. For a while, neither spoke. Then she said, She would have liked you, he said. I hope so, she said. She liked people who read things carefully. He said nothing, but his hands on the wheel were lighter, and that, between the two of them, was sufficient. I have been thinking about Aiden and Wosu for some time now, about what it means to spend years in a building where no one asks your name and to show up anyway. Not because you have been defeated into compliance, but because you understand that dignity is not something other people assign to you. You carry it yourself. You carry it in how you check the work in front of you. You carry it in how you speak in a room that is not listening. You carry it past the laughter, past the indifference, past every manager who tells you to know your level, as if your level is something they have the authority to define. DNA testing, as the science in Ada's story reflects, is one of the most precise tools we have for establishing biological truth. Used correctly and ethically, as Dr. Samuel used it, with transparency, independent verification, and the full knowledge of those involved, it can restore what was lost, confirm what was doubted, and give people something they had stopped believing they could still find. In real cases around the world, genetic cross-referencing has reunited families separated for decades. It has corrected legal injustices. It has given people the names they were born with. The science is real. Its power is real. And its most important rule is that it must be used in service of the truth, not around it. Which is why Ada's decision to flag that error mattered far more than she knew at the time. But the result that mattered most in this story was not the one that confirmed who Ada's father was. It was the one that was already there, visible in every choice she made in that corridor, at 11:23 p.m., with no one watching and no reward guaranteed. That is the test that cannot be forged, cannot be transposed, cannot be reversed by anyone with a laptop and an agenda. That is the test of character. I hope this story made you think about someone you have walked past, the people in the corridors of your life, who carry things you have not asked about, who know things you have not thought to discover, who are waiting, not for your recognition, but simply for the basic respect that should never have required waiting. And if you are someone who has felt like Ada, unseen, reduced to a function, told that your ceiling is fixed, I want you to hear this clearly. Your level is not determined by the people who have never paid attention to you. It is demonstrated, quietly and continuously, in what you do when no one is watching. Ada passed that test long before any boardroom discovered her name. Subscribe to the channel if this story reached you. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And wherever you are tonight, see the people around you. They might be someone's missing daughter. The characters and specific events in this story are dramatic fiction crafted to explore real themes. The way people are dismissed based on job titles rather than character. The way integrity operates quietly and without audience. the role of DNA science in questions of identity and inheritance, and the lasting impact of those who love us without recognition or reward. The science of DNA identification presented here. Cross-referencing, verification methodology, error rate analysis, and the ethical obligation of medical professionals to transparency reflects genuine principles used in clinical and forensic practice worldwide. What I believe is true, beyond the story itself, is this. The people in our lives who have been overlooked the longest are often the ones carrying the most. We rarely discover this until something, or someone, forces us to look. Perhaps the real value in a story like Ada's is not the dramatic reveal. It is the reminder, before the reveal, of who she already was. That should have been enough. It always should be.